Okay, hello everyone. Welcome to another YouTube live event with Crystallize. Today I'm once more with Didrik, joined by Didrik. Who is Didrik? Please go ahead, say that.
Because because you misintroduced me last time. I'm not head of engineering, but head of design.
Head of design of Crystallize. Yep, it was my bad. I don't know why I said that. But like we said, maybe one day. But yep. So
one day.
Yep, today Didrik will get us through a React Native e-commerce app example. So we'll see how it can be set up, how it's launched, and how essentially you can have it running. So yeah, please go ahead.
Yeah, I'll take over the screen over here.
Yeah, let me just stop sharing. Sec. Boom.
Here we go. Professional. Did it work?
Yep. Looks
okay, good. All right. Hello, everybody. Like Stavros introduced, today we are going to take a look at what I would like to call a React Native example. It's not as much a boilerplate yet, but it can be. If by popular demand, we should do it. But what we basically are going to show today is how you could take the same tenant that you have created in Crystallize and create a native app for it instead. So today we are going to use the furniture boilerplate. Some of you who are maybe in the Slack community will have seen that we are in the works of creating a new CI, or a new version at least. So we have included for this stream exactly, we have included the React Native boilerplate or example to the new CI. So here you can see we have our regular Next.js boilerplate. We also have a new example that is coming. We are going to make a stream about this as well. It is a magazine example. So maybe I did a spoiler there, Stavros, but you can stop me. But we also do have our Gatsby boilerplate. And these are basically our flagship boilerplates. But today we are going to show a React Native example. We are going to pick our demo tenant, which is furniture, like that. And here you can see stuff is happening, and we are almost ready to go. You can see that I have my Crystallize folder here, or Crystallize app folder. I'm going to go in here, and I am going to install my node modules.
So pretty much running exactly like we do with the Next.js one or Gatsby one, right?
Exactly the same steps.
Stuff.
I'll stop when there are some steps that you need to configure yourself, Stavros. But we'll see. We just wait for the dependencies here. And here we go. So what you need to do, which is basically React Native specific, is to go into iOS folder, also the Android, I guess. Disclaimer, I have not tested the Android stuff because this is still in early stages. But you need to go into the iOS folder and do pod install. What this is, it's basically a dependency manager for Swift and Objective-C. So you can see here, I'm installing a lot of libraries, which are the React Native libraries. Some claim that after 0.6 you don't need to do this step, but I still do it to my apps. But give me some comments if it doesn't work. And now we are actually ready to run our React Native simulator, or our iOS simulator. So we go for yarn React Native run iOS. What you do need is, of course, Xcode, because if you are developing on a Mac like I am, you will need Xcode to run the simulator and to install your React Native app on. This will take some time, but you can see here that I am booting up my iPhone 11 simulator. And the reason why I'm still calling this an example rather than a boilerplate is that I have not managed everything in regards of what is called the bundle identifier. So if you want to deploy this app to App Store, for example, you will need to handle that. And it's pretty well integrated to the project at the moment, but we'll maybe handle this another time. But it's still a way you can show or you can see how we would do it in a React Native app. And it's pretty much based on what we have in our Next.js boilerplates, because we are trying to be as framework agnostic as possible. So we are using a lot of the same code that we actually do have in the Next boilerplate. It's still not feature complete either. Like, we don't have the checkout yet, but I'll go around and show all the features that we have. But let's just take a look at our current web shop, which is the furniture.superfast.shop, I mean. And here you can see on the front page, we have a grid, which displays some products, some articles, yeah, and even some videos, which are articles. But the neat thing here is that everything here is displayed with a grid. And for those of you who haven't been following our streams, a grid is basically an organizer to organize your content for the front page or for your folder pages or whatever you want. It doesn't even have to be a page. It's just a way of organizing your assets or your items. As you can see here, we have, here we get this terminal. That means that we are almost ready. This is our front page grid for sorry, I'm stumbling a bit there. Sorry, so you gotta help me. But this is our
example tenant, right?
Yes, thank you. This is our front page grid for our tenants. So I'm not going to use that today because it is 4 columns, and I don't want to have 4 columns on my front page of my app, basically. But you can see we have our React Native. There we go. Yeah. So I'm going to show you both like this. Okay, so this is how it looks on the web, and this is how it looks in our React Native app. As you can see, we have a separate grid, and that's because maybe sometimes you want to have different content on your app than what you have on your web page, and maybe it's a different layout or whatever it is. And on our web shop, we actually do have the grid defining the layout of the front page. And so we do here as well, because we have 2 columns. We have stated that, I'm actually going to show it here. The top first grid cell is spanning over 2 columns. The same as the second. And here we have some products that we show. You can see it here. And we have some retro colors, which is still an article, and we have some products. Maybe we should even add another one here, Soros.
Nice, that's pretty cool. Actually, you've created 2 grids.
Yeah, let's add a clothing rack like this.
That's very nice.
Let's publish it. And of course, here you got to reload it. It's not Control-R. Well, it can be, but at the moment it's not connected. And here we have our clothing rack. So as you can see, even though it's a native app, you can still control your content through Crystallize. We can also see that we have navigation here. And just because I decided that I don't want to do the listing of the magazine and the stories at the moment, I just fetch the content for /shop like this. So the weird thing here is that we don't have a URL that you usually base your boilerplate on. Let me see, I'm just going to do this. Like that. But you still use the graph the same way as you would have in your browser. I'm going to go into a bit of code here and show you the structure. So let's open the home page here. Here you can see it's the same.
Maybe try to zoom in if you can in a bit.
Even further?
Yeah, a little bit.
Isn't this big enough?
Yeah, that's good. This is good.
There's almost one line on the whole screen.
I'm wearing glasses. I'm blind.
Okay, I'm going to blame your glasses. I will tell us if you can't see it.
Yeah.
Yeah. So let's just. I'm going to go into how we basically have created the front page and the differences from our Next.js boilerplate to the React Native example. Of course, in React Native you don't have HTML, so the markup is different from what we have in our web boilerplate. Like you have from React Native, you have view, text, scroll views, flat list, touchable opacities, which is basically, this is a div. It's a paragraph it's a view box. It's basically just to get the scroll or this stuff. Flat list is the same as, let's call it a listing, a UL listed items. And you have touchable opacities, which are buttons like that. And you have image. Image is self-explanatory. What we use as navigation is something called React Navigation. You could use this for the web as well. I'll go into that soon. But the most important part here is that even in React Native, we also do use Yorkle to handle our graph. We fetch the hook called useQuery, and we have our query in a separate file, just as in the boilerplate. You can see that inside of the query, we import our fragments, which are in lib graph fragments. Still, I'm probably going to say this a lot, but same as the boilerplate or our web boilerplate. So it's all pretty familiar when it comes to the setup. What we do is here you can see I have the variables, which is the path. I fetch all the items inside, and I know that this is a folder because I set it up. I fetch all the children of the /shop folder, and that's why I get all the categories, which are chairs, posters, kitchenware, etc. If I would like to make a navigation, I'll do this by just removing and making the refresh work, of course. You demo.
Yeah, just changing the path essentially, reloading.
Yeah, basically, but shake. There we go. Yeah, like this. So now you can see that we have all the root folders from our tenant in Crystallize, which is basically this. Shop, magazine, stories, about. We even have our, let's call it our dev folder, which, which we don't filter on. So we get this as well. Doesn't matter. What we also do have is, of course, the grid. I'm coming back to the grid now, and you can see that even in Crystallize or even in React Native, I mean, I have created something called an environment. And this is probably familiar to most of you Node developers out there. You have a file where you can define your variables for, okay, what is your identifier? It's furniture. Here we could have mini cars like I talked about last week. But one thing that differs from what we have in the other boilerplate is that instead of having a grid relation on this underscore for web front page, I reference the grid by ID instead and just fetch the grid. To get the ID of a grid, you just select your grid inside here, app feature, go to the GraphQL visualizer, and here you are. And then you can see inside my query, I just say, okay, I want the grid by this ID. So basically this. And then I render it. I get the content. See, here we go. Other than that, we have our grid renderer, which works in the same way. We have one wrapper that manages what kind of content type you are actually getting based on the item type. So let's see, we go into components, we have the grid here, and here we go. I actually haven't included the document type here, or I mean the category type, because in the grid I just defined a couple of products and the articles. But same as always, we fetch all the types from the grid. We pass it down to the grid renderer here, and this determines what kind of items it will return back. Is it a document or is it a product? I should, of course, add the folder as well.
Yeah, we can do that.
We'll do that later. We'll do that later. I saw that now. And then you get this. And how this works is, okay, we show the title, the text, and we of course have a path. But since we are now in a native app, we are not in a browser. We don't have a URL. So how do we handle this? This is where we have what we call the navigation. And like everything else, everything has a hook now. So I'm just going to use the use navigation hook instead. I am going to go into components. Let's check, for example, the product microformat. A microformat is basically just a small version of what is to come if you click this link. It's a smaller version of this document, and it's usually displayed in a listing like this. Here you can see, once again, we use the use navigation hook, and we call it up to navigate to a product. And okay, what does this say? We use the navigation, okay, it's a lot of functionality, navigate to product, and we pass in the item as prop. The product here is basically just an identifier to the screen in which or in where we are going to display the products. Like, let's see, in here. Let's see, yeah. And how this works is the whole React Native app is built up of a stack screen or a stack navigator, which could be stack screen, stack tab, or I'm mistaken. It's either a drawer or a stack. I might mix this up, but it doesn't matter. You can see it in the example. We have screens, we have stacks, screens, drawers, and
navigator
tabs.
I see on the
yes,
on the
sorry,
top.
you gotta help me out there.
Yeah, I just saw it on the top there. Right?
What we have is a drawer, we have a stack, and we do have a tab. What you usually see here is stacks or stack screens like this. The drawer is something I use for the basket, and the tab is whatever. When you come into an app and you have a lot of icons in the bottom that you can click, that is a tab navigator. But here, I especially use the drawer for my basket, and I use the stack to show my products, or basically the page. Yeah. And how like I told you, this works in the way that I use the navigation hook, and I pass down the item. And I pass down the item because inside of the product stack, you can see I'm fetching the path. So you don't have a way of tracking where you are in, like, okay, this and that path, but you can always pass down the whole item down to the product stack. And if you have the whole product, you also do have the path in where this is in Crystallize. And that means that, okay, I'll just use the same, okay, I'm actually on the wrong place. I'll just use the same query or the same hook, the use query from Oracle, and I'll use this property, which is route params path. It's basically the path of this product inside of the graph. I fetch it from the graph, and I display it like this.
So you basically get the data for the page that you want to render. If it's a document page, it's a different page. An article page could be a different page. Where, and you get the data, and then you have defined an array of multiple screens.
Yes.
Just like product, just like article. And you pick the one to be rendered or passed down. You pass the data, which could be the product or document, depending on the query, right?
Definitely.
And that's it.
Okay, good to solve us. Next time you'll do this.
Got it.
You explain it easier. No, but like we said, you have a lot of microformats, and the microformat and the type of item that you are actually showing is what determines where you are sending the user. So in which stack you are going to present. So if I open the document microformat instead, you can see that I navigate to an article
stack. Yeah.
In the product microformat, I navigate to a product, of course. And this is the product stack.
Great.
The document stack is, at the moment, it's looking like this. So this is the article stack. And how this works is, basically just like we explained now, that you, based on what kind of type you get from Crystallize, you send them to the right stack.
Yeah.
And as you can see, like I said, this is still an example with haven't populated everything here. We still need to fix our paragraph collection library so we can render it as React Native views and texts instead of HTML markup.
So it's basically render work.
It's render work. It is.
Like, if I'm right, it's just like the styles in the different render pages. So basically, you get that data, you choose how to style it, and yeah,
exactly.
And you return the view essentially.
Exactly. And talking about styles, how it works in React Native, and I'm just going to go through everything here as I understand it and as I know it.
Yeah.
It's basically the same as if you inline style in React. You have to import the style sheet from React Native. You determine or you create a constant called styles or whatever you would like, and you create a function that wraps this into a style sheet, like here.
Mm-hmm.
Picked a bad example because it's not inline. Here, let's do this. Is this readable?
Yeah, I guess so.
You guess so?
Looks fine. Looks fine.
Yeah. No, and you basically just call it as a style here. You could do this inline as well, like I have done here. I just extended the style and added flex one. One thing I should notice or explain though, that in React Native, all the views and everything uses display flex instead of what we are used to in the web or in the browser. It has flex as default, and instead of row, it's columns. So whenever you want things to be in a row, you need to define it.
Mm.
Other than that, it's pretty much the same. It's named the same. It's just camel cased instead. So you have padding top. You also have something that is pretty nifty, and this is padding horizontal. So you can do both. It's basically like
left and right.
Yeah. So
it
like
should be
this.
vertical though as well.
Yeah, exactly. That's exactly what you have. So you do have padding vertical.
Okay, I can read more views now. That's great.
As soon as you can. And of course, like I talked about, let me just get my proper index screen again. Like here. Okay, I just need to. I don't know why my refresh button doesn't work anymore, but I'm just going to shake it like this. Reload, and here we are. So here we have a listing of all our products, just like we have on our web page. And you can see, still missing the paragraph collection, but we also have variants. I hope it costs the same, everyone. And we have the basket, the drawer that I talked about. The cool thing here is that it wasn't much work to actually add the basket here, because the way we used it in our Next.js boilerplate, it's pretty much just React and JavaScript. So the only thing I had to change were the markup, as always, and how we handle the storage. Because in the browser, we used the session storage, and here we use something called an async storage, which is basically a local storage, I guess. So let's see. Inside component, we have our tiny basket, and we have our items and our index. Yes. So this is pretty much copy-paste from our Next.js boilerplate. The only thing I changed was how to display each card, like this. If you go back to, you can see that it pretty much looks the same and works the same. It's a bit different when it comes to, we have touchable opacities, because you use your thumb all the time or your finger, so you need more space. So you can actually click outside here. But other than that, it's all the same code.
Yeah, it's styling, basically.
Yeah, it's all styling. It's all markup, like we're shown here.
That's great.
Yeah, other than that, I'm stumbling a lot today, but that's because like introduction, I am the head of design, but I like to play around with different technologies, and React Native is one of them. like I said, if you would like to create an actual app out of this, I would use it as an example. Copy paste whatever you need, even use the boiler if you want to. But my hypothesis is that you are going to have some trouble when it comes to the bundle identifier. So that's why I will still call it an example. What I didn't show here is that we actually do have the search as well, which is something that that's for actually next week, I don't think, Soros.
Yep, you keep spoiling every subject.
I do. I'm on a roll today. But yeah, so we also added the search to this boilerplate. It will be released in the Next.js boilerplate as well, but it's at least a preview. So now you know.
Yeah, hints.
Yeah, the thing is, if I click anything here, I will break the app, and that's basically just because it's a different API at the moment. It's not in production.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Any questions, Thomas? That's basically what I had.
Pretty much understandable.
Pretty much. That's I guess that's the wording here.
Yeah, I think you have an initial state where you get all your items from your grid. Of course, this doesn't change. You define a grid, you define rows, columns, you add documents and products. You just need to define the specific render options for each of the types. And this micro format kind of tool that you have there. And that's it, pretty much. You just build your views. Yeah, you just build up the views, and like I said, it's not feature complete, but it's a lot of the features that we have in our boilerplate or in our Next.js boilerplate. So there's a lot of build up, a lot to build up on here. You can start it as an advantage to get started at least. Yeah, I think great, awesome. Yeah, and I would also like to say that if anybody would like to keep on working on this, we are going to work on it. But it's also going to be something that, if there's something that you see here and you're thinking, oh, this guy's wrong, please make a push or a pull request. Yep. We'll take a look. Community. Yeah. And like I said, we should probably make it an Ignite boilerplate or something instead. But hey, it's still a native app. Yep. Good. It's working. You can download, you can play around. So that's great. Try it out. Try it out. Get some feedback and tell us. So yeah, well, we're also going to be releasing a Flutter, or considering Flutter. I still call it a Flutter example. Yeah, example. Awesome. But it's basically just showing the power of using headless. That exactly. You have one tenant, and you can use it as an omnichannel. You can create an app, you can create a web page, or whatever you want. Basically, you have the same information and its structure. So use whatever channel you want. Exactly. So apps, boilerplates, whatever. Yeah. That's great. So stay tuned. I think Didrik has spoiled most of the stuff that we're going to be doing next. But there are a few cool ones. We also have a Next.js boilerplate coming up. So there's some things to be solved there for those that are interested in different stacks essentially. Yeah. So great. Thank you, Didrik, for the presentation. It was great. Yeah, no worries. I would also like to say if there's any other, I'm breaking your outro here. No, okay, go but for if there's any other languages that people would like to see, it would be great to get some feedback. Yeah, that's awesome. We'll do our best. Exactly. Yeah. So thanks everyone for joining. In any case, we're available, through the community Slack. So feel free to reach us out there. Reach out to us, and hopefully we'll see you in the next one. So bye.